On September 12, 1976, a tragic incident occurred at around 10:20 a.m. The lifeless body of a woman, estimated to be between 15 and 30 years old, was discovered. She had been subjected to a brutal assault, strangulation, and sexual assault. The violent act had caused significant bleeding, which had permeated her clothing. It was determined that she likely met her demise elsewhere and was later transported to the vicinity of Dogwood Road, near the rear entrance of a cemetery. During the investigation, it came to light that a Ford Econoline van might be connected to the case. Witnesses reported seeing such a vehicle near the location of the body approximately an hour before its discovery. The victim was found wearing a necklace made of a turquoise-colored stone bead fastened to a rawhide string. In her possession, 2 brass keys were found, one presumed to be for a house and the other for a night latch. These keys were attached to a safety pin within one of the pockets of her tan yellow jeans. She was dressed in a white and tan shirt, a white bra, and distinctive knee-high socks adorned with stripes of multiple colors. Close to her body, a single light tan moccasin with twine laces and a rubber sole was discovered, believed to have been worn by the victim. Additional pieces of fabric were also found with the body. The victim's face was covered by 2 bandanas, and a bag typically used for grass seeds was placed over her face. These coverings were securely fastened behind her neck with a square knot. One of the bandanas was blue and white, while the other was orange and white. The orange and white bandana had been intentionally altered with holes to align with her eyes and nose. Moreover, a fragment of the grass seed bag was found in her throat, which was determined to be the cause of her death, along with ligature strangulation. The bag bore the inscription Farm Bureau Association Grass Seed, Lexington, Massachusetts. Furthermore, the victim's hands were bound behind her back using a type of bandage, with notably proficient knots. A substantial quantity of the sedative drug chlorpromazine was discovered in her stomach. Chlorpromazine is commonly prescribed for schizophrenia, leading to a theory connecting the victim or her assailants to a mental institution. The sheet in which her body was partially wrapped was consistent with those commonly provided in such institutional settings. Forensic examiners conducted various measurements on the victim, determining that her weight fell within the range of 149 to 159 pounds, and her height ranged from 5 feet 6 inches to 5 feet 9 inches. The victim's blood type was identified as O positive. Notably, there were indications that she had received dental treatment. 3 molars had been extracted, while the remaining 5 teeth had fillings. Based on the extent and quality of dental care, authorities speculated that she did not come from an impoverished background. Additionally, one of her teeth was misaligned. On the victim's left arm, there was a poorly executed tattoo consisting of 2 letters, potentially initials. The combination of letters was believed to be JP, SS, JB, or a similar arrangement. Her ears were pierced, and she had a scar on her upper right thigh. A widow's peak was observed on her forehead. The victim possessed dark brown to black hair, which reached shoulder length and had a wavy texture. Her eyes were brown, and she had a dark olive complexion. The precise race and ethnicity of the victim posed a challenge for investigators and medical examiners, but there is a belief that she may have been of Caucasian descent. Following the discovery of the body, authorities promptly gathered fingerprint and dental information in an effort to identify the victim. Her fingerprints were added to national databases, along with her dental records, leading to subsequent investigations into the case. There were previous connections made between the victim and areas in Massachusetts and New York. Recent developments indicated the possibility that she was a teenage immigrant from Central or South America who may have resided in Jamaica Plain, Massachusetts. However, the family of the individual had not yet been located. In 2016, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children disclosed that she might have used the names Jasmine or Jassy while she was alive. Numerous missing women across the United States have since been ruled out as potential identities for the victim, known as Woodlawn Jane Doe. The county police department currently offers a reward of $2,000 for any information regarding this case. Notably, the case of Maria Mia Angiras, a teenager who had run away from her Connecticut home in February 1976, garnered attention. Multiple facial reconstructions of the victim have been created for public release. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has produced 3 versions, while other sketches of her also exist. The local police department provided an age regression and an additional reconstruction by Eve Grant, aiming to estimate her appearance at a younger age, in case she was a runaway or someone recognized her from an earlier period of her life. One of the keys found in the victim's possession was manufactured in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, and had the marking DB09212 on it. The grass seed bag was traced back to a factory in Buffalo, New York, and had been exclusively sold in several Massachusetts cities. Production of this particular bag had ceased years before the murder. Forensic pollen analysis of the items found with the body indicated that the victim had spent time in densely populated areas such as Boston, Massachusetts, or New York, New York. The detection of cedar and hemlock pollen suggested a possible origin from locations like the New York Botanical Garden or Harvard University. The case gained attention through its appearance on America's Most Wanted, resulting in processed leads that, unfortunately, did not lead to the victim's identification or the apprehension of her killers. In December 2015, a breakthrough was announced by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children following a tip received by the Baltimore County Police. A potential match was discovered, described as a Puerto Rican or Colombian teenager who had relocated to Boston, Massachusetts, with her parents and potentially 5 siblings. The tattoo on her arm, bearing the initials JP, was speculated to represent the area of Jamaica Plain where she possibly resided, specifically on Forbes Street. Possible school locations were also identified. However, locating the relatives of the girl has proven challenging, putting the investigation on hold. On the 40th anniversary of the victim's discovery, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released an updated reconstruction of her face. Through collaborative efforts involving the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Bode Technology, and Othram, detectives made a significant breakthrough on September 15, 2021. Utilizing advanced DNA testing, they successfully identified the girl as Margaret Fedorov, a 16-year-old from Alexandria, Virginia. Fedorov had gone missing in the late summer of 1975 when she was a student at Hayfield Secondary School. Her family had reported her missing 1 year prior to the discovery of her body. The investigation is still ongoing to determine the individuals accountable for her tragic sexual assault and murder. Elizabeth Lisa Ann Roberts, originally named Elizabeth Ann Elder, came into the world on November 3, 1959, in Hood River, Oregon. She was born to Mary Guignard and Stanley Elder. At the tender age of 2, she was adopted by Troy and Dolly Roberts from Roseburg, Oregon. This adoption took place following the divorce of her birth parents. Subsequently, her mother married again and had 2 half-siblings named Ken Christensen and Carol Holan. Growing up, Roberts had 2 adoptive sisters named Tanya Roberts and Lynn Roberts. Tanya, who was 10 years old when Elizabeth disappeared, fondly described their relationship, stating, "I looked up to Lisa as my big sister. She would spend time with me and play with me downstairs. We had a really good bond because we were both adopted." Roberts spent her formative years in Roseburg, Oregon, where she attended Roseburg High School. She was known for her deep passion for music and actively participated in the school band, showcasing her talent by playing the flute. At the age of 17 and 8 months, in the summer of 1977, Roberts made the decision to run away from home. This choice was prompted by a disagreement with her parents concerning a confiscated bag of marijuana. There were rumors suggesting that the disputes stemmed from the revelation of her adoption. However, her father denied this claim, stating that she was already aware of her adoption. On July 25, 1977, her father reported her as a runaway to the Roseburg Police Department. Several weeks after leaving, Roberts reached out to her mother from a payphone in Everett, Washington. She requested her parents to send her money, and they responded by mailing a check to a branch of Seafirst Bank. Strangely, the check was never cashed. In response to her parents' plea for her to come home, Roberts replied that she would take some time to consider their request. The last confirmed sighting of Roberts occurred 15 days after she left home, specifically on August 9, 1977. Numerous individuals witnessed her hitchhiking while walking south along Bothell-Everett Highway near Silver Lake. Eventually, a 20-year-old named David Martin Roth, driving his Chevy Nova and originally heading towards the lake, picked her up. Roth shared a beer with Roberts and drove to a secluded location near Mariner High School. It was there that Roth made a sexual proposition to Roberts, who firmly declined, expressing her desire to return home. In an act of brutal violence, Roth then used a bungee cord to strangle her after offering her a peacock feather. Subsequently, he dragged her lifeless body into the bushes and proceeded to discharge 7 bullets from his .22 caliber rifle into her head, severely disfiguring her face. Roberts' remains were discovered by individuals picking blackberries on August 14, 1977, amidst the brambles along the roadside in unincorporated South Everett. Due to the summer climate and the passage of 5 days, the state of decomposition hindered immediate identification. However, investigators were able to ascertain that the victim stood at 5 feet 10 inches, weighed approximately 155 pounds, and had light reddish-brown hair. Notably, she carried no form of identification, purse, or driver's license. Her attire consisted of a pastel tank top adorned with blue, green, and pink stripes, denim cutoff shorts, blue and white Mr. Sneaker brand tennis shoes in a boy's size 7, and a Timex watch with a yellow face and a leather strap, worn on her left wrist. In her pants pockets, authorities found 17 cents, an open pack of Marlboro cigarettes, and an empty plastic bag. Despite confessing to the murder, Roth maintained that he did not know the name of his victim. The post-mortem interval of 5 days had caused significant decay to the victim's body, making identification challenging. Initially, investigators believed that the remains belonged to a woman aged between 25 and 35 years, primarily due to the victim's tall and slender physique. In an attempt to recreate the appearance of the unidentified woman in life, Detective John Hines created a composite sketch. The sketch was shared with newspapers, but unfortunately, it failed to generate any substantial leads. One potential reason for the lack of progress may have been the age estimate, which inaccurately suggested an older individual than the actual age of Roberts. Meanwhile, Elizabeth Ann Roberts had been reported missing by her parents and was classified as a runaway. However, prior to the implementation of the Missing Children's Assistance Act in 1983, runaway listings were removed from the National Crime Information Center system once the individual reached the age of majority, as they were no longer considered endangered dependents. For months after Roberts was reported missing, she turned 18, resulting in her listing being deleted from the system. It is speculated that if her listing had remained active, Roberts could have been identified much earlier. As time passed without any leads for identification, the unidentified woman, referred to as Jane Doe, was laid to rest in a pauper's lot at Cypress Lawn Cemetery in Everett. In 2008, renewed efforts to identify Jane Doe were initiated after the Doe Network showed interest in the case. Cold case detective Jim Scharf took on the investigation, leading to the exhumation of the victim's remains for testing. Dr. Kathy Taylor, the state forensic anthropologist at the King County Medical Examiner's Office, conducted a thorough examination. This examination brought to light that the victim was likely a teenage girl, aged between 16 and 19 years old. Following this significant revelation, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children joined forces to assist with the case. In 2016, forensic artist Natalie Murray created an updated composite sketch to aid in identification. A partial genetic profile was extracted from one of the victim's femurs at a laboratory in the University of Texas. Unfortunately, this profile did not match any entries in the Combined DNA Index System, CODIS. Complicating matters further, it was discovered that the victim's bones had been subjected to boiling in the past, resulting in substantial damage to the DNA. As a result, extracting a complete genetic profile has proven to be extremely challenging. Since 2017, different laboratories have attempted, unsuccessfully, to obtain a full genetic profile using the victim's bones. On June 16, 2020, the long-awaited breakthrough in the case occurred when Roberts was finally identified. A dedicated team of 16 genealogists, working pro bono, played a crucial role in this achievement. Detective Scharf, who had been leading the case for 12 years, and Jane Jorgensen, the lead medical investigator at the Snohomish County Medical Examiner's Office for 3 years, were both instrumental in the identification process. The positive identification of Roberts was officially announced to the public on June 25, 2020, by Dr. Matt Lacey, the Chief Medical Examiner of Snohomish County. This successful identification marks the resolution of the oldest case of unidentified remains in Snohomish County through the use of genetic forensics. Roberts' case stands out as one of the pioneering instances worldwide in which cold cases were solved using DNA extracted from rootless hair. Since the DNA extracted from her bones was too degraded to produce a complete profile, innovative techniques in rootless hair sequencing were employed. These methods were pioneered by paleogenomics expert Dr. Richard Ed Green from the University of California, Santa Cruz. The hair used for Roberts' identification was carefully recovered from strands found on her clothing, which had been preserved in an evidence locker. As the hair had never been buried, the DNA within it was relatively well preserved. Dr. Green spent 2 years refining an algorithm that successfully generated Roberts' genetic profile. The team, led by Barbara Raventer and her Firebird Forensic Group, utilized public genetic genealogy websites in their identification efforts. Upon taking over the case, Raventer determined that previous samples from the remains did not contain useful DNA. It was then that she reached out to Dr. Green for assistance. After obtaining sufficient DNA from the hair, Raventer and her team turned to public genealogy websites like Ancestry.com to search for potential matches that could establish a familial connection and eventually unveil Jane Doe's true identity. Following the identification, Roberts' remains were exhumed once again and sent to Hood River, Oregon, where a memorial service and burial took place in a family plot at Pine Grove Cemetery. On February 14, 1982, an Arizona state trooper made a grim discovery while searching for a lost tire from a passing truck. Under a cedar tree along Interstate 40 at mile marker 151.8 in Williams, Arizona, he found the decomposing body of a young woman. She was lying face down, and her attire consisted solely of size 8 or 9 blue jeans with the brand name Seasons. Close by, a white sweater with thin red or maroon stripes, a size 36C white bra, and a white handkerchief were also found. The victim's jeans showed torn belt loops, indicating that she had been dragged approximately 25 feet from the road to the spot where she was discovered. No shoes or socks were recovered with the remains. Valentine Sally, estimated to be around 5 feet 4 to 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighing approximately 120 to 125 pounds, possessed striking blue eyes according to witnesses who had seen her while she was alive. Her hair, measuring about 9.5 inches in length, was either blonde or strawberry blonde in color. On her left foot, there were irregular and rough well-healed scars, measuring 3.5 and 1.4 centimeters, while a diagonal scar of 3.5 centimeters in length was present on the lower thigh at the back. Additionally, moles were found above her right breast on her chest. The medical examiner concluded that Valentine Sally had been murdered approximately 2 weeks prior to her discovery. Due to decomposition and the activity of insects and wildlife on her face, head, and neck, the exact cause of death could not be determined. However, the examiner believed suffocation or asphyxiation to be the likely cause since her hyoid bone was intact, and no other signs of trauma were observed on her body. Wildlife had torn off her right ear, which was missing. During the autopsy, it was also discovered that Valentine Sally had undergone preparation for a root canal on her lower left molar, tooth number 19, about a week before her death. A dissolved aspirin was found in the tooth's cavity, suggesting ongoing dental issues. Teeth number 1, 16, 17, and 32 had not yet erupted. The Doe Network has documented a case where a student from Northern Arizona University claimed to have given a ride to a girl who matched the description of Valentine Sally on February 2, 1982, near Cordes Junction. According to the student, the girl informed him that she was from Phoenix, where she lived with friends and worked as a dishwasher. She mentioned her intention to travel to New Jersey due to family issues and expressed her plan to seek a ride from a truck driver at the Little America truck stop in Flagstaff, hoping to make her way to the East Coast. On February 4, 1982, Patty Wilkins, a witness, observed Valentine Sally entering her family's Monte Carlo truck stop accompanied by an older truck driver. Wilkins found it unusual for a teenager to be out with an older man during the early morning hours. Concerned for her safety, Wilkins approached the girl and offered her the option to stay at the truck stop. However, Valentine Sally insisted on remaining with the truck driver. While the man ordered breakfast, the girl declined to eat due to a toothache, causing her companion to worry. Wilkins then crushed an aspirin tablet into powder and applied it to Valentine Sally's aching tooth. Tragically, the girl is estimated to have passed away within hours of this encounter, as the aspirin residue was still present on her tooth when her body was discovered. When detectives showed Wilkins photographs of the clothes found alongside the body, she was able to identify Valentine Sally as the girl she had assisted. In July 1984, there was a mistaken identification of Valentine Sally as Melody Eugenia Cutlip, a runaway from Istachada, Florida, who had been reported missing by her mother in 1980. A forensic odontologist from Albuquerque, New Mexico, determined that the bite marks found on both individuals matched. Furthermore, a facial reconstruction of the victim resembled Cutlip's appearance. However, when presented with the body, Cutlip's mother refused to accept it, asserting that Valentine Sally was not her daughter. Eventually, in the summer of 1986, Cutlip was successfully reunited with her family in Jacksonville, Florida. In addition to the facial reconstruction used in the 1984 misidentification, several other reconstructions were created in efforts to identify the victim. Just 4 days after the discovery of the body, a sketch of the victim was produced with the help of Wilkins' description. Subsequently, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children utilized CT scans of the victim's skull to develop and release 2 additional facial reconstructions. Furthermore, Carl Koppelman, an artist from California, independently created his own reconstruction based on these scans. These various reconstructions played a crucial role in the ongoing efforts to establish the victim's identity. According to Patty Wilkins, the truck driver observed with Valentine Sally was estimated to be in his 50s. He had a medium build and stood approximately 5 feet 8 to 5 feet 10 inches tall. His distinctive attire included a two-tone checker-patterned leather vest and a black felt cowboy hat adorned with a peacock feather. A sketch of the truck driver was created based on Wilkins' eyewitness account. Some individuals speculate that the sketch and description bear a resemblance to serial killer Royal Russell Long, who is known to have traveled along Interstate 40. Long was convicted for the murders of Cinda Pallett and Charlotte Kinsey in September 1981, but investigators have yet to establish any direct connection between Long and Valentine Sally's case. Long passed away from a heart attack while in prison in 1993, never having confessed to the murder of Valentine Sally. In 2005, the case of Valentine Sally was assigned to the Cold Case Squad, a specialized division within the Coconino County Sheriff's Office. Comprised of volunteers with law enforcement backgrounds, the group was dedicated to solving unsolved cases. Key investigators involved in this particular case were Chuck Jones, Jenna White, and Joe Sumner. Jones, a retired FBI agent, played a vital role in keeping the case alive, despite eventually leaving due to health reasons. Inspired by the breakthrough identification of the Golden State Killer through genetic genealogy, the Cold Case Squad believed a similar approach could lead to the identification of Valentine Sally. They enlisted the expertise of Barbara Ray Venter, the genealogist responsible for identifying the Golden State Killer, to assist them in this endeavor. The group extracted DNA from one of Valentine Sally's blood samples and submitted it to public access DNA databases used for constructing family trees. A significant breakthrough came when a match was found on Valentine Sally's family tree, leading the Cold Case Squad to determine that the match was a cousin. By following the family tree, they narrowed down their focus to a specific branch in St. Louis, Missouri, which included several girls. Through database searches, they were able to account for all the girls except for one who had disappeared from records around 1979. This girl, known for her history of being a runaway and with juvenile records that were never expunged, was identified by the Cold Case Squad as Valentine Sally. On February 22, 2021, the Coconino County Sheriff's Office publicly announced the identity of Valentine Sally as Carolyn Celeste Eaton, a 17-year-old from Bellefontaine Neighbors, Missouri. According to reports, around Christmas 1981, Eaton's family returned home to find her in the company of two unknown men. An argument ensued, and Eaton walked out of the front door, never to be seen or heard from again. It is believed that Eaton made her way to Arizona through hitchhiking. The investigation into Eaton's murder remains ongoing, with detectives actively pursuing any leads they receive. Of note, they are focused on gathering information about the truck driver whom Eaton was last seen with. Patty Wilkins, the witness who had the last interaction with Eaton, passionately expressed her desire for justice, stating, "Find out who did it and let me go stomp on his toes, okay?" On November 23, 2008, hunters in Fond du Lac County, Wisconsin made a chilling discovery when they stumbled upon the frozen remains of a young woman in a creek near an abandoned farm. Extracting the body required the use of chisels to chip away at the ice, and scuba divers were deployed to search the creek bed for any potential evidence. Among the items recovered were articles of clothing, including a strapless top from the Zoe Beth brand in black and pink, featuring a pink bow. It was determined that the top had been available for purchase at Family Dollar during the spring of 2008. The underclothing she wore, also from Family Dollar, had been shipped only between July 1 and July 15, 2008. The legs of her Angels brand jeans were rolled up multiple times, and an elastic ponytail holder was found on her wrist. Notably, no socks or shoes were found at the scene. Initially, no jewelry was discovered until divers located a St. Benedict medal, roughly the size of a penny. However, it was uncertain if the medal belonged to the deceased, as its time of entry into the water couldn't be determined. There are reports indicating the presence of a bracelet with multiple pendants on the girl's remains. Her hair, shoulder length, and varying shades of light brown suggested the possibility of having been highlighted. Determining her build was challenging due to the different sizes of her clothing items, but it was estimated that she weighed approximately 120 pounds. The cause of death for the young woman remained inconclusive due to the extensive decomposition of her body, which erased any visible signs of potential violence. However, investigators leaned towards the belief that her death was a result of homicide, as suicide was ruled out. Suspicion surrounding the location where her remains were discovered further fueled this assumption. Authorities conducted toxicology tests to determine if drugs or alcohol were present in her system, but the results were never made public. Despite the body being found in autumn, it was determined that she had died during the summer, approximately 2 to 4 months prior. This estimation was based on insect activity found on the remains. Some distinguishing dental characteristics were noted, such as an overbite, along with fillings and dental sealants on the upper molars. No current cavities were observed. While the overbite was not described as extreme, it could have been noticeable and potentially served as a reliable feature for facial reconstruction. Her height was estimated to be between 4 feet 10 inches and 5 feet 4 inches, placing her age between 15 and 21 years old, and her weight ranged from 110 to 135 pounds, with an average frame. The victim was believed to be either white or Hispanic, although the possibility of her being Native American or Asian could not be ruled out. There was also a chance that she was of biracial heritage. Additional physical characteristics included a healed rib fracture and a condition known as spina bifida occulta, although she may have been unaware of the latter. Furthermore, she exhibited a pigeon-toed or knock-kneed gait, which would have been noticeable as her feet were angled inward when she walked. In an effort to obtain DNA information, her femur was sent to the University of Texas. Her DNA profile was subsequently entered into the National DNA Database, and dental records were created to facilitate comparisons with those of reported missing persons. Over 200 leads have been diligently pursued in the ongoing effort to identify the victim. To aid in this process, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children utilized mortuary photographs and a CT scan of the skull to create a computer-generated reconstruction. The reconstructed image generated over 200 tips, however, none of them yielded substantial breakthroughs, as the composite resembled a significant number of missing individuals. DNA analysis conclusively ruled out Amanda Berry, a former missing person who was found alive in 2013. In addition to Amanda Berry, two other individuals who were eventually located, Connie McAllister and Brittany Pert, were also excluded from the case. McAllister, who was abducted from Wisconsin at the age of 16 and taken to Mexico, was eventually recovered alive after encountering a church missionary who reported the information to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Brittany Pert, who went missing in July 2008 from Elkton, Maryland, had her remains discovered and identified in December 2011. The cause of her death has not been publicly disclosed. As the investigation reached a standstill, the unidentified Jane Doe was laid to rest in 2011. The case received attention through television programs like America's Most Wanted in the hopes of uncovering new leads. A Facebook page was also established to generate public assistance in the case. On April 23, 2018, an updated reconstruction was unveiled, and authorities announced plans to exhume the victim's body for isotope testing and DNA phenotyping. These tests aim to determine potential geographic locations where she may have lived and provide a clearer estimation of her ethnicity and physical characteristics. Genetic genealogy, which played a crucial role in identifying a suspect in the Golden State Killer case, was also employed to locate individuals who may be biologically related to the victim. In August 2018, the results of an isotopic analysis conducted by Utah's ISO Forensics Laboratory were released. The findings suggested that the Jane Doe had likely spent most of her life in the southwestern United States, possibly in Arizona or New Mexico. It was determined that she had resided in the Midwest, potentially in southwestern Wisconsin, northern Iowa, or southern Minnesota, for less than a year prior to her death. While investigators initially speculated a potential connection to the West Mesa murders, this hypothesis was later ruled out. On November 28, 2021, exactly 13 years after the discovery of her remains, it was announced that the victim had been positively identified as Amy Yuri through the use of forensic genetic genealogy, led by Barbara Rae-Venter. The identification was further validated by comparing DNA samples obtained from her mother and sister, as well as through dental X-ray comparisons. Authorities revealed that Yuri was a victim of sex trafficking and would have been 18 years old at the time of her death in 2008. Through their investigation, they also uncovered that she had spent time in Milwaukee, Chicago, and Beloit in the weeks leading up to her demise. During conversations with Yuri's mother, detectives discovered that Yuri had reached out to her mother in northern Illinois in 2008, requesting a ride home from Beloit. Unfortunately, her mother was unable to fulfill that request at the time. Tragically, Yuri was never heard from again by her family. Multiple eyewitnesses reported seeing a female toddler accompanied by a young adult female, presumed to be her mother, in the early hours of December 3, 1982. These sightings took place in Moss Point, Mississippi, along Mississippi State Highway 63 and later on National Interstate 10 near the Alabama state border. The woman carrying the child was described as wearing a blue plaid shirt and blue jeans. The last sighting of her was walking west along Interstate 10, close to the truck scales at the Alabama-Mississippi border, sometime between midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning of December 3. Eyewitnesses noted that the woman appeared to be in a distressed state but vehemently declined any help offered by passing vehicles. These reports were supported by a woman who had been monitoring CB radio conversations between truck drivers on the same morning. She informed investigators that numerous truck drivers were expressing great concern about a visibly distressed woman walking along Interstate 10, holding a barefoot and coatless female toddler, who repeatedly rejected offers of assistance. It is believed that the toddler seen with the woman may be the victim, who was later found in the river. 2 days after these reported sightings, around 7 a.m. on December 5, a truck driver made a grim discovery. He spotted the lifeless body of an adult female, dressed in a blue plaid shirt, floating face down near a bridge that crossed the Escatawpa River along Interstate 10. Acting promptly, the truck driver notified the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, and a deputy was dispatched to the scene. However, upon arrival, the deputy did not find the body in the immediate vicinity where it had been seen. Determined to find any evidence, the deputy expanded the search radius along the river. Before long, he came across the partially submerged body of a small child with blonde hair, lying face up in the weeds near the bridge. Authorities swiftly concluded that the child had been thrown from the bridge into the area where her body was discovered. They also noted that it was unlikely that the truck driver had seen this specific body, as the section of the Escatawpa River where the child's body was found was densely infested with weeds, making it extremely challenging for passing motorists to spot anything in the water. After finding the child's body, authorities conducted extensive search efforts in the area near the Escatawpa River, where the truck driver had reported seeing the body of the adult female. Despite dragging the general vicinity with the help of helicopters and boats, their attempts to locate her body proved unsuccessful. To this day, the body of the woman initially spotted in the river remains unfound. There is no information to suggest that she has been found alive or come forward to the authorities. While the underwater search unit was unable to locate the body of the adult woman, they did make another discovery on December 8. They found the mostly skeletal remains of a young African-American male beneath the eastbound I-10 bridge, approximately 60 yards away from where the child's body had been found earlier. Investigators determined that this individual had also been thrown over the bridge. However, this victim had been deceased for at least 6 months and had been killed by gunshot, indicating that his death was unlikely to be connected to the aforementioned case. Investigators gave him the name Moss Point John Doe until his identification in 2022. During the autopsy conducted on the child's body, it was determined that someone had made an attempt to smother her before she was placed in the river. However, she was still alive when she entered the water and ended up inhaling the murky river water into her lungs, leading to her ultimate cause of death by drowning. The official cause of death was certified as drowning due to the inhalation of water upon impact with the river's surface. Investigators concluded that she had been intentionally deposited into the river from the eastbound I-10 bridge. It is highly likely that the woman seen carrying her 2 days prior to her discovery had thrown her into the river, possibly believing that the child had died from the attempted smothering. Before her tragic death, the child, known as Delta Dawn, was a healthy toddler. Based on the eruption of 12 milk teeth, her age was estimated to be between 1 and 2 years old, most likely around 18 months to 2 years. She was of Caucasian ethnicity, with curly strawberry blonde hair, and was described as remarkably beautiful. Due to the approximately 36 to 48 hours that her body had been in the river before being found, her eyes had clouded, making it challenging to determine their precise color. It is believed that her eyes were either blue or brown. Despite the damage to her eyes, her face was still recognizable. Delta Dawn stood around 2 feet 6 inches in height, weighed approximately 25 pounds, and although no food was found in her stomach, she showed no signs of malnourishment. At the time of her discovery, she was wearing a pink and white Cradle Tugs checkered dress adorned with 3 flowers on the front, along with a diaper. The funeral of the unidentified child, later known as Delta Dawn and Baby Jane to the public and the media, was primarily funded by a local deputy named Virgil Moore. Deputy Moore, along with his wife Mary Ann, initiated a fundraising and donation campaign involving local businesses and funeral homes to ensure that the child received a proper Christian funeral. Mary Ann Moore, appalled by the idea of the child being buried as a Jane Doe, came up with the name Baby Jane. This effort aimed to provide dignity and recognition to the young girl. Delta Dawn was laid to rest in the Jackson County Cemetery after a 1-hour service held at the Bethel Assembly Church in Pascagoula. The service took place a few weeks after the child's discovery, as all attempts to locate any relatives had been unsuccessful. Approximately 200 people attended the service, with 4 police officers acting as pallbearers. The funeral expenses were primarily covered by donations from local businesses and their employees. Delta Dawn's grave, marked by a flat granite stone with a ceramic vase, bears the inscriptions Baby Jane and Known Only to God. On the 25th anniversary of Delta Dawn's funeral, a memorial service was organized in her honor at the Bethel Assembly Church. Marjorie Brinker and Lynn Roos, 2 women from Alabama, took the initiative to arrange the service. Both expressed their disbelief at the act of throwing a baby into the river, emphasizing their desire to remember and honor the child. Extensive searches were carried out in an attempt to locate the body of the woman found floating in the Escatawpa River on December 5. Simultaneously, efforts were made to identify and locate the distressed woman seen walking along Interstate 10, carrying a barefooted child in her arms on December 3, in case the body found by the truck driver did not belong to her. Unfortunately, all these endeavors yielded no results. Various theories have emerged surrounding the death of Delta Dawn, with the prevailing belief being that the woman seen with the toddler was the child's mother, who may have either accidentally or intentionally caused the child's demise before potentially taking her own life. News of Delta Dawn's discovery and the earlier sightings on Interstate 10 spread across the country, prompting newspapers to publish stories about the case. Many of these articles included contemporary facial reconstructions, aiming to provide an approximation of the child's appearance during her life. However, initial attempts to identify Delta Dawn through this method proved unsuccessful. One report initially connected to the case involved a woman claiming to have given away her child to a group of men. However, investigators quickly determined that this report was irrelevant, as the woman had a male child and was unrelated to the case. In 2009, Delta Dawn's body was exhumed to obtain a DNA sample. This sample was then entered into national databases such as the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Initially, no matches were found between Delta Dawn or the woman believed to be her mother and any unsolved murder or missing person cases. Over the years, advancements in technology allowed for the creation of several forensic facial reconstructions in ongoing efforts to identify Delta Dawn. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children also released 2 illustrations depicting potential likenesses of Delta Dawn, and additional forensic artists produced their own renderings in hopes of uncovering her identity. On December 4, 2020, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office made a significant announcement, revealing the identity of Delta Dawn as 18-month-old Alicia Ann Heinrich from Joplin, Missouri. The confirmation of her identity came through DNA sequencing and genetic genealogy, with the child's DNA linking to family members in Missouri. A lab operated by Othram Incorporated performed the process of generating a profile suitable for public genealogy databases, while forensic genealogists from Redgrave Research Forensic Services conducted the research. It was discovered that Alicia's mother, Gwendolyn May Clemens, had recently divorced from the father of her daughter. On or around November 24, 1982, Gwendolyn, Alicia, and an unnamed boyfriend vanished from their residence in Kansas City, Missouri. Their intention was to relocate to Florida, as Gwendolyn had informed her relatives of her desire to start a new life there. The boyfriend later returned to Missouri alone. He has been referred to as both a person of interest and a suspect in various media reports, although he is now deceased. The circumstances surrounding Alicia's death and the disappearance of her mother are currently being actively investigated by the Jackson County Sheriff's Department. The fate of Gwendolyn Clemens remains uncertain. During a press conference on December 4, 2020, Sheriff Mike Hazel stated, "We do not know if she is dead or alive at this point. We're assuming the worst, but we don't know that for sure." Prior to the official announcement of Alicia and Heinrich as the identity of Delta Dawn, it was speculated that the unidentified woman accompanying the child on the eastbound Interstate 10 bridge was responsible for her death in a suspected murder-suicide. However, this theory is now being questioned.